It's always weird talking to a leftist about the military. They hate the military. It's visceral. I know they always say they support the troops. They're just against the war, but that's not really true. Take Thomas Mulcair's latest interview with Maclean's magazine. It just doesn't make any sense. Here's what he says about our modest mission. What is it, 6 CF-18s and a refueling plane that's making occasional strikes against Islamic State terrorists? I mean, a very low-risk mission, a very small mission. I'm proud of the mission, but really, it's just enough to say that we're doing something. Here's what Mulcair says in Maclean's. He says, "This is not our fight, and we've been very clear about that since day one," unquote. Well, I suppose in a literal sense, it's not our fight because it's happening in Syria and Iraq, but by that standard, Canada hasn't had a fight that was ours since the War of 1812, the Boer War, the First and Second World Wars, Korea, and every peacekeeping mission since. None of them are our fights. That's the miracle of Canada. We've been peaceful for 2 centuries. So should we just shut down our military? Well, see, that's the thing. Leftists like to have some toy soldiers to play around with. As a much more butch version of sending out self-righteous press releases. I mean, leftists measure things by how noble it makes them feel. So in the very same interview, Maclean's asked Mulcair if a mission had to be approved by the United Nations, as in by other countries before Canada should join. And Mulcair said this, and I quote, "I think a mission that is mandated by the UN, like the one to protect people in Libya, was one where Canada could get involved." Huh? So how on earth was that our fight? Libya was not the nicest place in the world to live in. It was a dictatorship run by Muammar Gaddafi, but he wasn't slaughtering his people in the streets by the thousand. He wasn't orchestrating mass murders of Christians and Kurds and Yazidis. He wasn't setting up an economy based on slavery, on rape slavery of women like the Islamic State is doing. How is Libya our fight, but the Islamic State isn't our fight? Why? Because the United Nations had a vote on it? Let me tell you what that means. The Libyan attack was approved by a UN Security Council Resolution 1973. Only 10 countries voted. The United States, UK, and France, plus, get this, South Africa, Portugal, Nigeria, Lebanon, Gabon, Colombia, and Bosnia. That's it. That's who voted for it. 10 countries. None of them being us. Why does Thomas Mulcair think that these 10 foreign countries are in a moral or legitimate or democratic position to decide when and where Canada should fight, more than Canada is ourselves? I agree with the principle of siding with allies and planning with allies, but that's not who Gabon or Colombia or Lebanon are. Nothing against those countries. I'm just asking, why is Thomas Mulcair saying that those countries can make decisions about Canadian soldiers' lives, but Canadian elected politicians can't? And how on earth does the imprimatur of the UN ambassador from Gabon determine that it's okay for Canada to attack Libya, but if the ambassador of Gabon were to say no it's not, then no it's not? How does Mulcair square this circle? Oh, I almost forgot to mention, the United Nations actually did call for the Islamic State to be defeated. Here, you can take a look at their press release here. It uses words like defeated and stamped out. This is their official news release on the subject. You know, Thomas Mulcair doesn't have a coherent strategy. No one tell Thomas Mulcair about this press release. He'll have to twist himself into an even bigger pretzel to make sense of it. Can we just admit the obvious? If Stephen Harper is for something, Mulcair's against it, but it's bigger. The left hates our soldiers. I've never seen a leftist call for the disarmament of our enemies, only of ourselves. The left actually admires the world's biggest butchers. How many leftists do you see wearing Che Guevara shirts or Mao Zedong shirts? But the left hates our own soldiers because our own soldiers stand for the forceful assertion of our Canadian national interests. And that's something no leftist has ever supported. For TheRebel.media, I'm Ezra Levant.